we clicked the go live button. I hope everybody is seeing pictures on their screen, able to hear everything. Let me know if all the audio and video is working out okay. YouTube was having a little bit of trouble acquiring the stream from the software that I'm using, so hopefully everything will work out okay. So thank you guys once again for hanging out with me for this lunchtime live stream. Yeah! It's always awesome to be able to spend a little bit of time with you guys. It's always a part of my day that I'm looking forward to, not the least of which because I'm usually eating something absolutely delicious. Today on the menu for my amazing lunch, I have this trio of desserts. These are Temptation Trio Private Selection, Kroger store brand. Nothing super special, but this is just from the Kroger store bakery. It looked absolutely delicious. After yesterday, I'm not super hungry for sugary stuff, but you know, this stuff just looks so good. I could not pass it up. Yum. So, like I said, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you're doing well. Oh, we have Johnny Styles in the chat. Thank you for showing up today. He says, "Hey Steve, how are you?" I'm doing great, thank you. You know, we're coming around the second half of 2020. I really hope that the year 2020 gets a little bit better in the second half. And as any folks in America know, we've got a really big popular holiday coming up. July 4th, just a couple of days away, represents a lot of awesome things that are that have happened in the past. And of course, it's a day where a lot of people are celebrating in myriad ways, not the least of which there is the Coney Island Hot Dog Eating Championship, yeah, which I haven't seen an official lineup, but I think I can infer what a lot of the lineup is going to look like just from what's been going on social media. Sounds like Matt Stoney is not going to be at the Coney Island Hot Dog Eating Contest this year. Instead, Nick Weary got his invitation to fill up that spot. So I think they're looking for having 5 men and 5 women there, just trying to make sure that everybody who's invited can actually travel to get there. I believe Joey Chestnut said he is already in New York. He wanted to get there a little bit early to avoid any travel logistics that might go wrong. And along with that, I believe it was George Chigger that I saw. Was it George Chigger? You know what? I'm not going to say whether or not it was George. But I did see some other folks saying that they were going to be there. So I'm really excited to see how it's going to shake down, how everybody's going to do this year. Joey said he wasn't able to get quite as much practice in as he wanted to, but the over-under for him is still 71 hot dogs on Bet Online. I believe it's 71 hot dogs. I'd have to look that up. But I think it's going to be a super exciting year. But on to, believe it or not, competitive eating is not the most serious thing in the world. So I thought it'd be cool to check out basically what July 4th is all about in America. I feel like most people have this kind of basic idea of what it's about. You know, it's the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But looking a little bit more at what exactly the history of it is, you know, it's actually really kind of interesting. And I think that, you know, I'm probably not the best person to talk about this. I'm probably not even the best competitive eater to talk about this. Now that I think about it, Natter Freak Eating, he's I mentioned before, he's a history teacher, so he probably knows a lot more about this than I do. But when I was looking into it, you know, like I said, there's some really cool and interesting history to it. Got some really interesting characters that are all associated and involved with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Now, for anybody who's outside of the U.S., you might know this as National Insurrection Day. We call July 4th Independence Day for obvious reasons. Tuna Shogun, thank you for showing up. He says, triple the flavor, triple the fun. Heck yeah, dude. You know, I'm actually going to try one of these. These are what's called 7-layer bars. Looks like it's just covered with a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know what these are. These may be butterscotch chips or peanut butter chips. Something like that. Oh, yeah, they taste a little bit caramelly, almost like a butterscotch chip. So I think that's what it is. Along with chocolate chips, looks like we've got some shaved coconut on there. some kind of custard or cream underneath that. I don't know where all 7 layers come from, but that's probably a couple of the layers right there. Oh yeah. Magnifique. I think that is absolutely delicious. Lots of different flavors in that. Very, very unique flavor. Of course, I got some milk because this is the kind of dessert that you need to have some milk with. All right. So let's get into this. What was happening around 1776 and the first Independence Day? Or I guess the reason that Independence Day became a thing. I believe it was actually Independence Day, 4th of July, wasn't actually made a national holiday until like the 1940s or something. So for a long time, like, it was just kind of a day in the year that nobody really talked about, presumably. I don't know, maybe people celebrated it unofficially before then, and then it just became like a federal holiday after that. In fact, I believe July 3rd is a bank holiday, and it's a holiday at my office. So, like, I'm not going to work on July 3rd, or I don't know, I might work, whatever. But if I do work, it's considered overtime. It's actually a holiday. And July 6th is another day that's just kind of like straddling that weekend, this year anyway, that I think a lot of people are going to take off just so they can have a nice 4-day weekend. Every year, like I mentioned, yesterday was my birthday, and I mentioned yesterday that one of the things that I really loved about having a summer birthday at the end of July was that I always got to ask for fireworks and stuff like that. Because I really enjoyed fireworks. I loved seeing, the big mortars in the sky with all those awesome colors, lots of fire. I also liked firecrackers a little bit, probably not as much as like the sparklers and the, aerials and that kind of thing. But I was a little kid, so of course I did like blowing things up just a little bit. Now, in my state, fireworks or I should say my county, fireworks are illegal. Is that true? I think that some fireworks are illegal. In the county that I grew up in, fireworks eventually became illegal. So you'd have to like go to some Indian reservations or something like that if you wanted to actually purchase fireworks and light them off. It was actually illegal to bring them into city boundaries. So it's a little bit looser nowadays, but it's still pretty stringent. I think that, Pacific Northwest, it's not really known for having dry areas, but, to each their own. Oh, Tuna Show, you say National BBQ Day. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that just about everybody's going to have barbecue that day. I'm actually hoping, if I can line this up, I'm hoping to do a live stream on Saturday to watch the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest, maybe even eat a couple of hot dogs myself, to provide a little bit of commentary for anybody else who wants to watch along. I don't know where I can actually view the hot dog eating contest, though. So it's kind of up in the air because, like I said, I don't have cable TV. If I can't find something, maybe I'll just do something pre-recorded and release it at a later date. But yeah, I'm hoping to be able to at least see how I'd stack up against some of the competition there, even if I'm not going to be there myself. Because I am interested to see how I'd stack up against Nick Weary. I feel like he and I are probably pretty close. Right now, if he feels confident that he can hit 40 hot dogs and buns, I think he might have me beat. But I still think it'd be cool to see how I stack up against him. Like I said, even if it's not face-to-face. Anyway, getting back to this, 4th of July, where does it come from? So this is just history.com. The History brand, also the owners of the History Channel. So I'm just going to take a look at some of this first part, not read through this entire article because it is pretty long. So the 4th of July, also known as Independence Day or July 4th, has been a federal holiday in the United States since 1941. There we go. But the tradition of Independence Day celebration goes back to the 18th century and the American Revolution. On July 7th, or July 2nd, more likely, 1776, The Continental Congress voted in favor of independence, and 2 days later, delegates from the 13 colonies adopted the Declaration of Independence, a historical document drafted by Thomas Jefferson. From 1776 to the present day, July 4th has been celebrated as the birth of American independence, with festivities ranging from fireworks, parades, concerts, to more casual family gatherings, and barbecues. The July 4th of 2020 is Saturday, July 4th, 2020. Yeah, lots of cool stuff there. I think I wanted to mention a couple of things in there. Yeah, I think that it's interesting that when America first started becoming a country, it's interesting to think that back then, it was a lot more difficult to travel from Europe to America. Like nowadays, it is a little bit cost prohibitive, but basically anyone can save up their nickels and dimes and travel back and forth intercontinentally if they want. I should say once the borders open up a little bit. I know things are a little bit closed down right now for the pandemic, but in general, intercontinental travel not a super big deal. But back then, basically the people that were able to travel to America of their free will, I gotta put that in there. I know that in the current climate there are some individuals who were forced to travel to America against their will from the continent of Africa, but yeah, that's a topic that I've hit on before, so I don't plan on diving too deep into that topic today. But most of the folks who traveled to America of their own free volition, who wanted to come here, were coming from Europe. And like I said, it's not everybody. It was basically like aristocrats, the wealthy folks, people who were able to afford to come, people of upper class origin, stuff like that. So it's interesting to think that America was there's a little bit of this brain drain almost from Europe, where a lot of highly intelligent, highly well-funded individuals and families were traveling to America and creating their own country. So this was a country that was actually founded by a lot of lawyers, doctors, highly intelligent people, scientists, people like that who had the means to actually travel to America. So I think that they did a pretty good job of creating what they called their Declaration of Independence, writing one of the most famous American political documents, or legal documents, I suppose. But a little bit of the history of Independence Day. Let me see. By the middle of the following year, so the Revolutionary War broke out in April of 1775. In the middle of the following year, however, many of the colonists had come to favor independence, thanks to the growing hostility against Britain and the spread of the revolutionary sentiment, such as those expressed by the best-selling pamphlet Common Sense, published by Thomas Paine in early 1776. I was actually thinking that maybe I'd read out the full text of Common Sense on this live stream, but then I saw that it's a 33-page document of really small text, so I think I would need a 2-hour live stream to do that, so I went ahead and gave that one a pass. All right, so let me see. So I believe Thomas Paine and Common Sense, that was, I believe was circulated early 1776, January, February, somewhere in that time frame. And then moving on, it says on June 7th, when the Continental Congress met in Pennsylvania State House, later the Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the Virginia delegate Richard Henry Lee introduced a motion calling for the colony's independence. Amid a heated debate, Congress postponed a vote on Lee's resolution, but appointed a 5-man committee including Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, John Adams of Massachusetts, Roger Sherman of Connecticut. I don't know who Roger Sherman is. That's a name I'm not familiar with. I should probably know that. Ben Franklin of Pennsylvania, and Robert R. Livingston of New York. The 3 big names that I think most people know there are John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin, I gotta mention, one of my favorite historical figures of American history. He was like a playboy. He was like a rock star back then. So I really like Ben Franklin. If you ever want to look up somebody who's really interesting, check out Ben Franklin. He is a totally cool cat. So yeah, they basically got together and wanted to pen the Declaration of Independence. And I'm gonna take a moment to have one of these awesome lemon bars. And catch up on the chat. Tuna Shogun say ESPN will have it I believe Darren Eats posted a link to his live stream last night. I would contact him to get the link if he has that information. Interesting. I'll check it out. I wonder if the fact that it's going to be a little bit more of a closed setup, that it's going to allow the YouTube slash competitive eaters, the YouTubers slash competitive eaters, to set up their own thing a little bit more easily. I know in the past the logistics were such that a lot of people, I don't even think that they were allowed to set up cameras on the table. I think that it was just considered like too much of a hassle, basically. So it would be interesting to see if if Darren's going to be there. I don't know. Hopefully he's going to be there. He's an East Coast guy, so I don't think it would be too tough for him to get to New York. Yeah, it would be cool that if he's doing like a live stream of his own. Yeah, I'll have to check that out, and I'll ping him. I shouldn't speak about Darren as though he's some ephemeral guy that I've never met. He and I are on a pretty friendly basis. So, met him a couple of times. I won't say that we're close-knit friends, but definitely on a first-name basis. So I'll have to ping him, see if I can get that info from him. It also might be streamed on ESPN on YouTube. Definitely, I'll check that out. Tuna Shogun, are you saying there's a hot dog ad next to this live stream that you're viewing? Maybe, man, maybe. I wouldn't doubt it. Anyway, moving on. So let's see. I was going to take a look at, like I said, I was going to take a look at Thomas Paine's Common Sense, but I feel like the kind of old-style English makes it a little bit difficult to really understand. But yeah, it was basically like the modern version, or I suppose I should say the revolutionary American version of like modern blogs. Basically, like handing out a pamphlet was kind of the way that people got their ideas and stuff out in the world. So he did pretty good for himself. I believe it says somewhere in here about the number of people he reached, that his pamphlet sold. There we go. 2 years later, his 47-page pamphlet sold 500,000 copies, powerfully influencing American opinion. So Thomas Paine, good for you. One of the most successful self-published authors out there. Good job, man. Let me see. The Declaration of Independence, though, that was the really interesting one. That's the thing that, everybody wrote up their ideas and their ideals of what made a country. And that's the one that I think reading some of the text, because it's still quite long, but it's quite a bit shorter than, it is feasible to get through this thing in just a couple of minutes. So the Declaration of Independence, that is the legal binding document written by Thomas Jefferson that everybody signed on to, that basically declared the reasons behind, the Americans' reasons behind wanting to split from Britain. And it was like, we're either doing this all together or not at all. So it was a really, really big act of bravery that all of these individuals basically signing this document was an act of treason. Like the fact that these individuals were signing this document, they were absolving themselves. How do you say? They were renouncing their allegiance to the British Crown and saying, like I said, they were going to be exiles and they were going to be criminals because of this. And renouncing one's citizenship is a gigantic deal. I've mentioned in the past that I purchased a couple of firearms, and one of those things on that little questionnaire that they give you when you purchase a firearm is they ask you if you've ever renounced your American citizenship, which, given the fact that I live right outside of Seattle, where we've had the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or now the Capitol Hill Organized Protest occurring, kind of makes me wonder what the heck is going on and like what exactly it means to renounce one's citizenship. But anyway, Declaration of Independence, like I said, very interesting document. If you have the time to read it, I thought it'd be cool to go over just a couple of the paragraphs here. I don't think I have time to go over the entire thing, but if you do, maybe you can get it in like audiobook form. I'll read it over. So it begins, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume, among other powers of the earth, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and their happiness. I think that second paragraph now, right there, has got to be just about the most powerful piece of like legal literature that anybody can get their hands on today. Like, it is incredible what they're saying right there. Let's see, we've got a lot of stuff to like dissect from this. I'm not going to dissect all of it. A couple of interesting things. They do say things like that all men are created equal. There is some controversy about the fact that this is kind of a patriarchal document, but you do have to take into account the time in which this was written. The word man and men back then just meant something completely different from what it means today. If you actually look at the etymology of those words, the word man was not used to refer to a person, a male person, basically. It did not mean that. If you look back in, I think, the 17th century, I don't know how long this was about, but at least in the 17th century, I'm sure that the words that you will use to refer to what we now call men and women were actually were and wif, W-I-F. So you'd actually use the names wereman and wifman to refer to men and women, respectively. And the word man was more synonymous with what we might say as a person today, where it just meant like you were referring to a person of ambiguous gender. So to say that all men are created equal in 1776 was the same as saying that all people are created equal, basically. Now, it's not to say that the wordage here shouldn't change. I think that's quite the opposite. Like, as the English language has grown and evolved, then the naming of, or the meaning of these words have changed along with it. So it does actually make sense, like, to amend some of these statements to say that instead of all men are created equal, to say that all people are created equal, for example. And then in the future, presumably the language is going to change again. Maybe the word people might refer to something else in the year 2100, and then it might make sense to change it again. I think that is one of the most interesting parts of the... Oh, let me see. What part was that? Then to secure those rights... Here we go. Then to secure those rights are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. That, again, like, super, super powerful words there. Basically saying that if the government is not effective in what it's supposed to be doing, like how a lot of people feel the American government is today, then it is the right of the people, not only the right, but I feel like it's the responsibility of the people, and a lot of times, to go about either changing the government or just getting rid of it wholesale to create a new government. I don't think we're quite at the point of overthrowing the U.S. government, but I think that we are at a turning point where a lot of people are wanting the government to change directions, wanting a lot of change. I feel like change is coming fairly rapidly nowadays, and I feel like the way that the government is set up to respond to things very slowly. So I think that we're due for a little bit of change. Moving on. So, like I said, I think the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, just some of the most powerful language you could possibly find in anything. And like, it does set up that, like, one of the reasons that the American government is so amazing, and America in general is so amazing, in my opinion, is that it is actually written into the Bill of Rights, to the amendments of the United States, and to the Declaration of Independence, that they understood that the United States government that they were setting up in 1776 was not going to be sufficient to deal with problems that they would not be able to predict coming in the future, like in 2020. So they actually wrote into the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States that the government should not be bound by the rules that were written back then, and it should be flexible enough to be amended. And in fact, that's the reason why the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in general are, written in amendments. That word, it means to change and to fix, basically. So, like, it's a lot of people, disagree with it, but I think it's mostly because people don't understand that the system is actually set up to be reactive and to change along with changing norms and mores. So that's like the main reason I don't think that the American government should be thrown out wholesale. It's going to change because it was made to change, and like I said, to change slowly so that it wouldn't change to basically sway with the wind, but to change for the better, for evergreen. How should I say? Evergreen principles, basically. Let me see. Moving on. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. There we go. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the form to which they are accustomed. It's basically saying, like, people tend to find it difficult to change, so the government should not be reactive to the issues of the moment. They should instead try to change with evergreen issues. There's a common saying that a lot of people are willing to stay the same until staying the same hurts more than change. So yeah, that's kind of what it's saying there. Interesting little bit, probably not the most interesting of the Declaration of Independence, but an interesting little bit. But when a long train of abuses and usurpation, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces? I don't even know what that word means. Must be some old English words. Evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such a government and to provide new guard for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in the direct object of establishing of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let the facts be submitted to a candid world. Boom, right there. Like, they wrote it down, making no bones about it. Like, they felt that the British government was basically a tyranny, and they were not going to have any of it. So I think that just those first few paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence are incredibly powerful text. I think that anybody, especially anybody in America, whether you're American or not, it's very interesting to look over this legal document. It is one of the more powerful and absolutely one of the most influential legal documents in America. I think it's incredibly interesting stuff, as long as you can get past kind of like the old-timey English wordage that's in there. But, so it goes. Let me catch up a little bit on the chat, and I think it's going to be about time that I say goodbye. Oh, I see you're saying... your boy a Criff. What's good, man? It's been a long time. Yeah, dude. It's been a long time since I've seen you in the chat. Good. Thank you for joining the live stream today. AJ says, fingers crossed on some true change. SCOTUS is doing great lately. Yeah, I think the Supreme Court is a very interesting topic. I heard some commentary on the Supreme Court this morning from a conservative political commentator, how he's mentioning that a lot of times the Supreme Court, like the Democrats, tend to really nominate very progressive Supreme Court justices, and the Republican side of the aisle tends to like support more, or they tend to put forward more like moderate candidates, which is kind of an interesting way to think about it. So I think that if you are a progressive or left-leaning individual, the Supreme Court of the United States is probably looking pretty good. And I think that's the way to go. Like I said, the American Constitution is set up to change, to be progressive, to change with the norms and the mores of the people of the moment. I've been hanging on to this lemon bar very, very long. I think that even like I know it might be a little bit controversial for me to say it, but even Justice Kavanaugh, who everybody was up in arms about, like he is actually proven to be a lot more moderate than a lot of people feared that he might be. So I haven't taken a really close look at how he's been ruling on a lot of on most of his cases, basically on most of the cases that are coming through. So I think it would be interesting to look at him and the way that he's ruling, strictly from a political standpoint. I know from like a personal standpoint and from like a characterization of him as a man, it's kind of skeezy, but I haven't looked too deeply into that. But yeah, the Supreme Court right now is definitely like moderate to left leaning. So interesting stuff there. It is interesting to see how things are going to wrap up. Like I mentioned, our current president of the United States has done such an abysmal job of handling the current situation that I could not see him winning more than just a handful of states at this point. I think that a potted plant with a D slapped in the front of it could probably beat him come November. So fingers crossed we're going to have a change in administration in a couple of months. And we'll have some people who are a little bit more politique, as it were. Oh my goodness. Ooh. Those lemon bars are absolutely delicious. I do try to stay away from the politics a little bit. I'm much more interested in like the objective stuff. So that's why I'm more interested in legal documents than I am about like political grandstanding, that kind of thing. But yeah, I thought it'd be cool to take a little look at what I think is one of the most interesting legal documents of revolutionary America. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. If you are American, rock on. We're going to get through this. America's going to come out all the stronger. If you're outside of America, a little bit of insight into what's going on inside of America, or what was going on in the 18th century. Some really interesting stuff. I realize that it's probably not as interesting for European folks or for Asian folks. But, you know, this is just my opinion because I am American. I am American. I am not America. I am American, so I do like this country. I think it's pretty great. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. It was a wonderful lunch. I appreciate you guys. I'm planning on doing it again tomorrow. If you guys want to, pop back in about 23 and a half hours. I'll be back live streaming. And until then, peace out. You guys take it easy. Ooh. Oh my goodness. I was hitting the wrong button. Okay, now I'm leaving for real this time. Catch you guys later.